Crazy Rich Asians is the outrageously funny debut novel about three super rich pedigree Chinese families and the gossip, backbiting, and scheming that occurs when the heir to one of the most massive fortunes in Asia brings home his American-born Chinese girlfriend to the wedding of the season. The cousins in London, Nick, Astrid, and their families walk into a hotel soaking wet from the rain just arrived from Singapore. When Nick's mom tries to check the soggy people into their hotel, they're thwarted by a rather bigoted snob named Reginald Ormsby. Ormsby is surprised that the Youngs are Chinese since they booked the fancy Lancaster suite, but he lies that he cannot find the reservation. The women, Eleanor, Felicity, and Alexandra, praise Ormsby for details about the missing reservation. He slips up and mentions their sweetie by name. Felicity snags the reservation books, discovers the reservation, and drops some names to get him to hand the keys. But he refused.
No room at the inn,
Mr. Ormsby said, and suggests they find a hotel someplace in Chinatown.
We're not friends of Mr. Ormsby,
The three women said. Eleanor silently blames the situation on her dowdy-looking sisters-in-law. The children Eddie, Astrid, and Nick kill time in the hotel lobby. Eddie charges a soda to the room and bosses around his cousins as the chairman of their pretend business. Eddie knocks his coke out of Nick's hand, which he made him hold, then blames Nick. Ormsby tells the family they need to leave the premises. The family huddles under an awning in the rain while Felicity hunkers in a phone booth to call other hotels. Nick suggests sleeping under a tree in Hyde Park. Astrid agrees, recalling a night she and Nick slept under the stars at their grandma's. But I want the royal sweetie with caviar and champagne, Eddie said.
who is this kid?
Eddie's mom, Alexandra, silently laments Eddie's behavior and notes she's glad he's away from the influence of his friend Liu Ming. Felicity's husband, Harry, is furious when she tells him what has happened with a classic.
Did you tell him who are we?
Harry said. After discussing that all the VIP hotels are booked up for Commonwealth Day and cousin Leonard is off grouse hunting in Surrey.
Who are these people?
Leonard said. Harry says he'll call the hotel owner, who he met at a golf outing in California. And suddenly, the children are entering the hotel lobby again. Nick, Astrid, and Eddie walk to the bar to get themselves a drink. Pompous Ormsby hustles to intercept the kids when the owner of the hotel, the Lord Robert Calthorpe Cavendish Gorey,
Walks in with Eleanor, Felicity, and Alexandra at his side. Walks in with Eleanor, Felicity, and Alexandra at his side. Walks in with Eleanor, Felicity, and Alexandra at his side.
The hotel owners say that 3 times. Calthorpe hadn't been in this hotel for years. To our delight, Calthorpe calls Ormsby or Wormsby and tells him a few important things. Calthorpe hadn't been in this hotel for years. To our delight, Calthorpe calms Ormsby or Wormsby and tells him a few important things. Prepare the rooms for the ladies and their children. He no longer owns the hotel, and may he present the new owner. Felicity Leong said, the new owner of the hotel. Nick and Rachel in New York. Nick invites Rachel to come with him to Asia for the summer and a wedding. Rachel is unsure. I don't want to be a distraction, Rachel said. Nick tells Rachel about Singapore's food obsession. Yeah, us too, including Ama's, Rachel said.
But wait, she doesn't make them herself?
Nick said. While Nick and Rachel plot their Asian excursions, a girl in the cafe Celine overhears them. She recognizes Nick from a time she had seen him at the Palau Club in Singapore with her mom and sister. Mini flashback to Celine, her sister Charlotte, and her mom talking about Nick's smoking good looks, his good education, and his good prospects as a husband. Mom encouraged Charlotte to snatch him up.
Yeah, he sounds promising.
Celine said. Celine takes a photo of her friend, but is really taking a photo of Nick and Rachel. She quickly emails it to her sister in California. Enter a text exchange between Charlotte and Celine to determine who on earth that girl in the photo is, whether there's a ring, and a commitment to more spying. Nick continues to convince Rachel to go to Asia, but she's still reluctant about the amount of time away, though she's intrigued about exploring more of Asia. What does this trip really mean? Going to a wedding together? Meeting his family? 10 weeks on the road? Does she hear wedding bells? We learn in Rachel's culture. She's deep in old maid territory at the age of 29. But kudos to Rachel. She's been more focused in her career. Not so fast though. This invite from Nick seems to awaken the romantic side of Rachel. After all that, Rachel agrees to go. Fresh off the convo with her mother, Rachel asks Nick about the sleeping arrangements while they're in Asia. He says it'll all sort itself out when they arrive. Rachel's reaction isn't as go with the flow as Nick's, and he senses the tension, so he assures her his folks aren't the kind that give a hoot about sleeping arrangements.
I'm so lucky to have her. She's so beautiful, natural, and uncomplicated.
Nick said. He recalls his earlier phone conversation with his cousin Astrid. She levels with him about how bringing Rachel home will take the relationship to the next level. Nick wants to show Rachel his world and see how she'll react to it. He doesn't think this should become a diplomatic incident.
It's a trap.
Nick said. Astrid can see that Nick is naive too much of how their world works, either from living outside Asia so long or being sheltered by their grandmother. Astrid attends the three's fancy party in Paris. Her friend Natalie, daughter of the banking royals hosting the gig, compliments her unconventional line dress as something only she could pull off at a fancy event, then realizes it's an original fancy schemacy designer whose stuff is on display at the Musée Galliera. Nathalie discloses the strategic setting arrangements that keep her angry husband away from her and instead seated next to Astrid, who was a yummy actor sitting on the other side of her. I am very much disappointed that Astrid is living in Paris, Nathalie said. As she walks through a receiving line, Astrid greets Nathalie's mom, who introduces her to the Baron de la Dore. After Astrid walks away, the Baron comments she saw Astrid necklace at the premier French jewelry and asks who Astrid belongs to. Jacques! Nathalie's mom said. Nathalie's mom said Isabel explains Astrid is no-kept woman and says Astrid's family is one of her husband's largest clients. Her husband Laurent de El Herme Pierre, says Astrid, only exists to feed obsession. The Baron asks how the Chinese have so much money since they were all penniless communists in drab little Mao uniforms not so long ago. Laurent provides helpful historical context for the differences between the mainland and overseas Chinese. The mainland Chinese have made their fortune in the last decade like the Russians. However, the overseas Chinese left China before the communists took hold. In some cases, hundreds of years sooner, they spread through Asia, amassing huge fortunes over time. Then he proceeds to name drop those who run commerce in Southeast Asian countries, including the Liangs, Astrid people. Isabel drops that Astrid family is strangely rich, and Astrid has even more to inherit from her mother's side of the family. Now colored impressed, the Baron approaches Astrid and compliments her necklace, then asks if Astrid would be willing to give her granddaughter advice on a trip to Asia. The quick about face isn't lost on Astrid. We're told Astrid isn't a conventional beauty, but is inexplicably alluring. She has frequently been stopped by modeling scouts, but her mother insists that modeling for money was beneath her.
So modeling for free is still on the table?
Baron said. Back to Rachel in New York. Rachel is peeved that Nick's parents are just finding out she existed. After 2 years? Rachel said. Nick defends himself, saying he keeps boundaries between his personal life and his family life. They discuss the differences between their families. Nick's families doesn't discuss their emotional lives, and Rachel and her mom are super close. Nick knows he screwed up not telling his mom about Rachel. When he called, she said nothing and only asked where each of them would be staying. He called his great aunt Rosemary for advice. You should stay in a hotel first, but introduce Rachel at the first day at lunch, Rosemary said. Nick must visit Amma alone and formally request to invite Rachel to a Friday night dinner. As a result, Amma should invite Rachel to stay after dinner. If not, Rosemary will let them stay with her. Rosemary seems alright. He knows Astrid is right that he should prepare Rachel, but he's conflicted since he's been brought up to not talk about the family. How does Nick prepare Rachel for his family? Rosemary said. Later, Rachel and her mom chat about how unique their relationship is, since Rachel traveled with her single mom around the country as a child. They were able to be closer than other families. Carrie tries to help Rachel see the situation through her eyes, the eyes of a traditional Chinese mother. She even offers that Nick's parents may be poor or devout Buddhist. Rachel wonders if Nick could be embarrassed of his own family. Her BFF Picklin had never heard of the Youngs. Are you sure they're not Korean? Picklin in their previous Skype call is sure. His family is perfectly normal. Well, let's find out. When Astrid returns to Singapore in time to put her son Kashan to bed and hide her couture purchases from her husband. Her husband Michael has been distressed and busy at work, which has required frequent traveling to China to get his new tech biz up and running. Missing him, Astrid wants a perfect night to welcome him home, wine and dinner on the balcony. Her family doesn't understand her hands-on approach to her life, unpacking her own luggage, taking directly to cooks. Yes, it all seems so strange. We're given a little peek into the typical life expectancy of an elite Singaporean girl, which schools to attend, the tutors, the music lessons, the post-secondary experience of in the UK, the choice between medicine or law until marrying a man of prestige at 25, the kids, the social life, the grandkids, and the death. But Astrid did things differently and has been scrutinized along the way. Rumors followed her throughout childhood. Charlie Wu became her beloved after using lots of money for grand gestures. They were engaged until Astrid broke it off, much to her family's relief, by tossing a frosty in his face outside a Wendy's. Astrid disappeared in Paris and eventually emerged engaged to Michael Theo, a middle-class nobody. The two were married in a private small wedding, starting off an intimate life together. Michael and Astrid make love. Eddie Cheng in Shanghai. Edison Cheng is in Liu Ming's luxurious closet in Shanghai, drooling over the life his friends has. Jealousy overcomes him when Leo shows how the closet rocks and organizes his outfits. Eddie feels compelled to smash Leo's face in, a pattern of show and tell and jealousy rooted in their childhood. Leo is spoiled rotten by his father. Eddie believes he has cheap parents for not doing the same for him. While Eddie's current life is inviolable, there seems to be something wrong with everything. His dad's lineage is common. He's not a doctor like his dad. His wife's dad had a scandal, and their youngest kid seems off. Eddie and his family live in a penthouse, have 5 vehicles, a yacht, a condo in West BC. He's a member of all the right clubs, has a Canadian permanent residence card for his entire family, over 70 watches, is socially elite, and has had 3 mistresses. Yet Eddie feels extremely deprived. No house on the peak, one of the most prestigious places to live in Hong Kong. No plane, his yacht is too small, and he has to work for his money. Oh, Eddie honey, we feel so sorry for you. Eddie calls his parents selfish because they didn't know how to flaunt their wealth properly, the biggest failure of all. Eddie begrudges his parents everything, especially his poor accommodations growing up. But he has one thing Leo doesn't, an invite to Colin's wedding. Nick and Rachel, on the other hand, live the pampered first-class life on their flight to Singapore. Nick tells a concerned Rachel he used frequent flyers miles to the luxury. Rachel feels guilt about him using so many points. After they've been escorted to a suite on the plane that can be converted from the screening room to a dinner long to a bedroom, Nick jokes about how this is lowbrow by Asian hospitality standard. Rachel's friend Sylvia has set her up with Nick because she met him and decided he's the one for Rachel. A bit stubborn about dating Asian men, Rachel bickers with Sylvia about how Nick won't be her type. Rachel's friend Sylvia has set her up with Nick because she met him and decided he's the one for Rachel. A bit stubborn about dating Asian men.
Oh, come on, Rachel bikers. How Nick won't be your type? He's a professor, a good-looking Asian,
Sylvia said. No, 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 no. A big no. No Asian guys policy. Rachel justifies her distaste for Asian men by saying she's been set up plenty of times. Sylvia, Rachel, and Nick all met up at a coffee shop. Rachel stays quiet until Sylvia chastises her. Nick seems not to notice this is a setup, and seems to Rachel to be more interested in Sylvia. Sylvia, Rachel, and Nick all met up at a coffee shop. Rachel stays quiet until Sylvia chastises her. Nick seems not to notice this is a setup, and seems to Rachel to be more interested in Sylvia. While she stows in her discontent, Rachel reflects on her bias. She got special treatment from Asian men that assist her physically, socially, academically, and otherwise to determine if she is a proper wife and bearer of sons. Nick does not engage in this exchange of SATs, social, academic, and talent aptitude assessment, and it is disconcert to Rachel. She sees he's different and is pulled into a conversation with him. Their date continues after Sylvia leaves, continues on through dinner, gelato, a walk through Washington Square Park. Rachel and Nick arrive in Singapore, greeted by Colin Ko and Araminta Lee. Rachel takes in the beautiful people and airport. 2 Land Rovers wait for them, one that takes the luggage to the hotel, one that Colin drives. Nick recalls going to the airport as a kid, how special it was, especially to get ice cream. Travel was different back then. Colin takes the crew to get local food. Rachel and Araminta bond over Colin first movies. The Singaporeans bicker about which places have the best satay, since arguing about food is the national pastime. At Lau Pa Sat Food Market, Colin orders a little bit of everything for the table, showcasing Singapore's reputation as the true originators of fusion cuisine. Nick, Colin, and Araminta talk about Eleanor being one of a kind. Unexpectedly, Rachel is invited to Araminta's bachelorette party, sealed with a clinking of beer glasses. Nick is enamored all over again with Rachel, overcome with a surreal feeling that she's home with him, and glad she's charming his friends.
Cheers to Nick. Thank you, Iho, for bringing us here.
Rachel mother said.
I'm so glad you like it, Mrs. Chu. My pleasure.
Well, I have to admit, this Singapore sling is better than I imagined, Picklin said.
Okay, let's all go to the Chinatown food market on Smith Street.
Nick beamed. Alamak, Nick Smith Street gets so crowded on Friday nights, and there's never any place to sit. Oh my god! Why don't we go to Glutton's Bay? It's so crowded here. Picklin complained.
Yeah, I know you were going to suggest that. All your princesses love to go there.
No, I just happen to think they have the best satay, Picklin said defensively.
Rubbish. Satay is the same wherever you go. I think Rachel's mom would find Smith Street to be more colorful and authentic.
Nick argued. Rachel glanced at her mother. They can do all the arguing? Mother's Rachel said. Well, just sit back and eat. Rachel said.
But why are they arguing so much over this?
Carrie asked. Rachel rolled her eyes and smiled. Mom, Dad, let them be. Let them be. This is just how they all are.